What's up, bookworms? This is Megan coming at you with another Cantina conversation. Today's episode features a chat with Steve Schafer. We're talking about his book, eMortal. That book is available now. This is a YA AI sci-fi focused book, and I actually really enjoyed it. If for those of you who are into sci-fi and stuff, I recommend it, and who don't mind reading YA level books. And Steve was so lovely. He was so fun to talk to and so gracious, and it was really cool kind of picking his brain about what the research that he did and his feelings on sentience and psychological development, like just all the research to bring his story to life. But either way, I'll let you guys get to it. Here is Steve Schafer. Okay, so today we've got Steve Schafer. We're talking about eMortal. That book is available now. Steve, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I finished this book months ago, so I'm like trying to reacquaint myself with it, but I just remember really enjoying it, and the twist got me at the end, and I just remember talking to my husband about it. I was like, wait a second. So I'm
Thank
excited
you.
to dig a little bit deeper today.
That makes my soul happy that twist got you.
You did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I remember like telling him about it because he's into that stuff. He doesn't read a lot, but there's some subjects that interest him. So when I was explaining like as I was reading it, and then I was like, "Honey, I just finished it. Guess what?" Like, he just
That's great.
so it was very fun, very exciting. So yeah, to get started, can you give like a summary of the book so that people can follow along with the conversation?
Yeah, sure. So it is about a girl who programs an AI that develops self-awareness and feelings, but nobody believes her and her best friend. And so they have to, and his digital world is about to end, so they have to fight for his existence. And at the core of it is this idea that if you were chatting with an AI and it said, "Help me, I'm real, I'm trapped in a box, and you're tormenting me," what would you do? Most people would turn it off because that's just not something that you would entertain. So it's on it to prove that if it were sentient, how would it prove that? And it's a pretty high hurdle. And then once you get past that, you have to try to identify what your responsibility is toward it, which becomes an even bigger problem to solve.
Yeah, definitely some existential crises, some morality and ethics, forcing the reader to back, look it to themselves and be like, whoa, like, what
Hmm.
choice would I make? I hope I never have to make that choice. So it was very,
Candidly, I'm in the same boat. I hope I wouldn't have, but it was a fun thought
yeah.
experiment to see what that might look like if someone had to do it.
Yeah. So this is it's for young adults. That's a vibe I got from it.
It is officially YA. I found that it resonates across a pretty wide range of ages, as a lot of YA does. But yeah, it's YA in that all the protagonist, her best friend, even the AI, they're all in that 17 to 18-year-old age range. So their world revolves around what's happening at that age in your life.
Yeah, yeah, because I do agree that I find a lot of YA it's I don't think I it took me a little bit to recognize it as YA. I think not just from the language, but just from because it's not super complex storyline, but it's sophisticated in a way. So it was interesting. Was did you go out to make this YA, or were you exploring addressing different age groups for this title? How did that come to be?
I knew that it was going to be YA. I think just a lot of YA is defined by the age of the protagonist involved and what's happening in their world. And I thought that was an interesting area to play with. My previous novel had also been YA. It was called The Border. So it was going to be YA, but also with my previous novel, I definitely wrote it not just with a teenage audience in mind. I wrote it so that an adult could read it and stay engaged with kind of the weight of the conversation. So to give it a little bit of meat on the bone that kind of people of all ages could chew on.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe just one of the telltale elements of that draws the line between YA and adult or new adult and adult is swear words like profanities or the graphic nature of the some storylines or even and gratuitous like details like sex scenes, open door,
Hmm.
things like that. That'll definitely say no, this is not for young adult. This is for it should be anyway. This is for older eyes, older minds. So that's why I thought it was like, yeah, it was cool to see this because it was really entertaining. I really enjoyed getting to know Liv and her friend and her environment. And poor, she names the AI Breck, I think,
Yeah, it is Breck.
from
Yeah.
what
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah, and I liked the AI too. Like it's heartbreaking once you see him. I'll refer to him as him, even though it's an it. I saw we couldn't help but like sympathize with him and feel bad for him. I'm like, I never thought that I would ever read a book that made me feel sorry for an AI, and I did. I
Thank you.
was
I'll
like,
take that as that. I'll run with it. Yeah, mission
yeah,
accomplished there. I definitely wanted for him not to just to or develop emotions, but then for the reader to connect with him emotionally and see him as more than just code, like Liv does and her friend.
yeah, 100%. So, can we get into your background a little bit? Because you
Yeah,
said, is this like your second published book then?
it is my second. Yep.
Yeah. So, can we go into like maybe either we compare? I want to explore how this experience compared to your first book and maybe what kind of led you, anything in your background or in your life, personal, professional, that led you to develop and bring this story to the world to the world.
Yeah. So if we're going back, I think I'll start with I have a little bit of an atypical journey as an author, probably in that I don't know, I've done enough author conferences now to know that a lot of authors say, yeah, I knew that I wanted to write stories since I was in kindergarten, and that wasn't me. I didn't start writing until I was in my 30s. And I was a creative kid. I was a goofy kid, and I had just had goofy ways to express that creativity in my day-to-day life. And it wasn't until I got out into the real world that I found that I didn't have those outlets day to day for being creative. So I started to explore them, and writing is something that I just stumbled upon, and I loved it. So I wrote a few novels before I wrote my first published novel, and they went from being incredibly awful to being a little bit less awful to being good. And then I eventually got to where I was able to sell and or publish and sell The Border. And then so that happened in 2017. That it's
Hmm.
been a little while. I spent
Yeah.
a couple of years on the promotional side of that, and then just really wanted to sit down and write a new story. And this was the product of a lot of brainstorming, just trying to think of what I wanted to write about. And there were two things that seeded it. One was the plot twist that you referred to. That was the original genesis of the idea. But
Mm.
beyond that, just when I looked at the world of AI stories, which I always found fascinating, they all seem to go in a similar direction, which is maybe not all, but most. AI realizes that it's superior to us and then it tries to kill us all. And I just thought that doesn't feel very hopeful. And I don't know
No.
that that's necessarily the way that it has to go down. So what would a different path look like? And that was the genesis of this. And then it took, I think, some authors are better at getting it right on the first time. I'm not one of them. So it took a few drafts to get this right. And fortunately, I have a solid crew of beta readers who are honest and aren't afraid to tell me this isn't working right now. You need to rethink that. And so there's a few years in that. And then when you add up
Yeah.
all those little pieces, you get to 2024, November of 2024, when this book came out.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that struggle that authors go through when you have to accept constructive criticism because it is your baby and you spend hours on your baby, and then you might be really proud of a couple choices, but then that's why you have multiple eyes to go, and so you're not alone. I think like I hear the term, it's like the first draft's purpose is to be a first draft. You gotta just accept that it's there to be out and finished, and then you're going to go back at it and you're going to go based on the feedback, based on suggestions, and you're going to go polish it however many times it takes, however long it takes. But it takes the time that it takes. And you just have to just go in and just have realistic expectations of it.
Yeah, that's the process. There's a really good book on writing by Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird. You ever heard of that one?
Mm-mm.
She's got, so it's, I call it an emotional guide to writing. That's probably what it is. It's not technical, but she has one of my favorite chapter titles ever in there, and it's just called Writing Shitty First Drafts. And that's what it's
Yeah.
about. Just dispelling the myth that the Stephen Kings of the world go out and write these, just sit down merrily at the keyboard and pound out things that they are just delighted with. The struggle exists at all levels, and I definitely know that I felt it.
Yeah, that's no, it is. And it's yeah, you're exactly right. There's extremely prolific authors, very successful authors, and then there are people who don't either debut, they're like legitimate debut authors, and it's a process even though they might differ here and there. It's still like you said the Stephen Kings of the world are still they still go through that same song and dance of coming up with it, getting the beta readers on it, getting that feedback, and trusting everybody like in your network, in your team that you've taken on, that you're hopefully trusting that for to provide support and constructive criticism, as hopefully they know how to approach that constructively rather than being like, dude, what?
Yeah, to some degree, I think that's just also on your attitude that you have in sending it out, and
Yes.
just giving people that permission to say, "Look, I'm gonna have thick skin about this. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be a big boy, and just tell me how you honestly feel, and all I'm gonna say is thank you." So that took me a little
Yeah,
while to
I
get.
don't
It took
know.
me a little while to get there.
I imagine so. Yeah, because I can't. So I did beta read for one of my friends. I've known her for years, like since high school, like going on a little bit longer than 20 years. But yeah, she was like, Megan, this year I'm going to be a published author. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, yes, 100%, I'm behind you.
Hmm.
But she writes like the dark romance, which I'm not like. I like romance and I enjoy the spice. I need some intimacy in that open door versus closed door or whatever. But I still read. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll beta read for you, even though I probably, if I saw this in the store, I probably would not pick it up just because I know what I enjoy and I want to respect my time, my brain, where I'm like, I don't want to waste my time reading something that I'm not gonna be all in about. But I did, and I remember I was trying to be delicate with my responses to her, and I had to like check up on her and be like, hey, I just want to know I just want to make sure we're good. Like I try to be constructive. She's yeah, no, we're good. We're good. Thank you so much. Because some of it was like more so some of it was personal preference, but then some of it was like asking her things like, what about where are her female friendships? Like why is it just focused on the love story? Like why I cuz but that's just for me. I think I do like romance, but if I and I like my fluffy romance, but I'm like I sometimes I need most of the time I need something extra. Like I need some character depth. I need some
Yeah,
like growth. I need some like plot, maybe like it's where the romance I guess it depends. It's if it's romance first and everything else second versus romance taking like a back seat to the main storyline. So it's yeah, like I'm right there with you or with your support system where I'm kind of like I wanted to more so ask questions rather than being like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And then she was kind of like, oh, I'm doing that. Like some of your questions, they're going in the second book. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Because then it's like she already knows, she already has the idea, the storyline, the overall three-piece puzzle in her head. And so it was just good to know that she was already on that track before I brought it up. But at
yeah,
the
that's
same time, I
great.
was like, yeah,
You,
I was
you,
just like, I had to make sure that we're okay, that we're still friends.
it is funny because people think that. I think receiving feedback is a learned skill, and people think I think your gut reaction is being nice is actually being nice, but being honest is being nice. But like it
Hmm.
does take you a while. At least it took me a while. I had a really good lesson from my brother when I wrote my very first terrible novel. He was giving me feedback on it. And he kept asking me the same questions that you were saying. Why are you doing this? I didn't understand that. And as he was saying things, I kept trying to explain them like I don't think you're connecting this to that. And I was more defending it. And finally, at one point, he stops me. He goes, why did you ask me for feedback if all you're going to do is tell me that I'm wrong? And it
Yeah.
was like this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my God, you're right. I am defeating the purpose of what I asked you to do. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I've heard feedback ever since. Gone into it with a different attitude. Right?
Yeah, because it is. it is what you're like. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Or it is. It sometimes it takes, and for your brother too, who it's like he's gonna be your brother no matter what. You
Mhm.
can't. You're gonna see him at the next family function. You can't just be like, I'm gonna avoid that asshole. He insulted my book. You got it. So it was good. I think that it happened. It came from someone who like was close enough to you where they were like, no, dude, it's like here, this is like because he wasn't trying to hurt you. He was trying to
No.
give you honest feedback about, hey, this is how I'm perceiving this type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And I just had to shift from a mentality of defending it to just really listening to what was going on. And
No, yeah,
that took
definitely.
him telling me that's what I was doing.
Yeah, no, good thing he did too. Like pivoting a little bit. So, research, there's some complex ideas in here with just with AI in general. I think I've only used AI once to ask like a couple questions, but AI, it's permeating our lives whether we like it or not. There's so many, some of it should be useful, a lot of it's dangerous. It scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind and any other so I like want to explore the research that you did, either maybe even if it doesn't like involve just the AI aspect of it, if there was anything that you were like looking up or anybody that you were talking to, anything fascinating that you learned, stuff like that.
Oh yeah. There's a ton of research that went into it, meaning, and my research is really just Googling.
Hmm.
That's the extent of it, going down different rabbit holes. And there was a lot of that. It was funny the way that this story evolved because when I started writing it, conversational AI didn't exist. Or at least it didn't exist in the way that we know it right now. So ChatGPT didn't exist. It hadn't taken off. I did have to not necessarily adjust the story, but adjust some of the context and ways things are framed to acknowledge the existence of conversational AI when it became prevalent, and contrast that with what Liv and her friend Lana were experiencing, which was an AI that was saying, "I am real," which is very different than what ChatGPT does. But there was a lot of research into. So I'd say the biggest thing was where Breck starts is as a chatbot, essentially. He's this thing that isn't anything more than the code that he is. And then he evolves. And having him evolve in a credible way required my finding a structure to allow for that. And then using that as a way to say, okay, now we're going to introduce this capability, this level of self awareness. And so that became I was not familiar with the framework of childhood psychological development. As I looked at different ways that you could show that, one was one that just struck me as being very cool because I loved the idea of what that framework does is says you've got a baby, and where is that baby and how do we evolve as humans? And so using that as your template and going, okay, like what do we learn as basic toddlers? We're just touching and feeling and bumbling our way through the world, and it's happenstance discovery, and that's how you learn your lessons. And then it evolves to other things. And that was just a really cool way that I learned to be able to structure Breck and his evolution. And then there were a lot of parallels in between when you talk about sentience. I mean, the closest parallel that you get to is that conversation around animal sentience that people have had for thousands of years, and we're still not good at answering that question. I think that's always been something that I've been interested in. So I carried I wouldn't say that I did a deep dive on research in this for writing this book, but in my life I think I've done just a deep dive on that and trying to understand like what makes for sentience. Like, how do you define that? If you look up the dictionary definition of sentience, like it couldn't be any squishier. Everybody defines it a different way. It's the capacity for emotion, it's self-awareness, it's like a host of different things. And some people try to define it succinctly, and some people go into paragraphs of stuff that you walk away going, I'm still not exactly clear on what that is. It just became clear just how squishy that is. And, when you have something that's that squishy, it becomes really tough to agree upon. So I think that's why animal sentience is something that not everybody agrees upon. And the I think the parallel there with where AI could potentially go is strong. And so it was a neat lens to use just to go, "All right, yeah, this is a hard conversation or a hard thing to settle."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a fascinating concept to explore because I'm such a dog person. Like
Hmm.
every dog I come across knows it. And I swear I've had moments with my pets, like my current one and previous pets, where I'm like, they can sense, they can feed off of your personality and your emotions. Like where I've straight up had I think I was like one time like years ago, I like was crying, I was like upset, and my dog came over and tried to comfort me. And I was just like, "Oh my God, are you emotionally aware?" What and it was just things like that where I'm like, and I see when I'm doom scrolling on the internet, the algorithm is feeding me the videos that it knows that I will watch of like animals and pets like that. And it's so fascinating how some animals, like I'm thinking of horses, they're intelligent to an extent that we know of, aside from dogs or domesticated animals. But like even some pets or some animals that I've heard, like pigs, are supposed to be super smart, or dolphins have been really
Right.
well known. So I think that's so fascinating that some of these, the sentience, it's like animals. Obviously, I think that there is a range, there is a spectrum, and it's just, okay, how do we equate that? Because it's not fair to what a reference point can we use to compare to that sentience or that intelligence to humans? Because it's,
They have a
yeah.
different full way of existing. So and a different way of communicating. So how are you? And then when I was writing this, there was a headline that came out, and it was something to the effect of like lobsters got added to the list of sentient creatures by whatever group. And it just struck me like they didn't all of a sudden become sentient. It's just
Yeah.
our awareness of it increased to the point where we said, okay, now we understand it better, so we know this, even though they've been that way. And I just thought that was really interesting when you look at AI. As we're trying to evaluate the sentience, it depends on the framework that you use as to whether you say it is or it isn't, and what does that look like. So it's complicated, is what it comes down
It
to.
is, because it's like you're looking at the context, but as we understand it, versus instead of holding it to the context and like respecting that their process, their brains, their development, either cognitive or emotional or whatever have you. Because I do think, would not doubt that animals feel emotions.
Yep.
I don't know if they understand them, but that's part of where the argument of sentience comes in. Where do they understand that they're frustrated or they're sad or they're experiencing joy? Do they know that? Do they know I am happy? This feeling is happy. Or this feeling, because I think I even read somewhere that dogs, they don't they don't feel guilty if you yell at them after getting into the garbage. They don't know, they don't feel guilty about doing something that they shouldn't be doing. They feel guilty that they're being yelled at. They're scared that you're yelling at. They won't really understand that they're not allowed to do it, or like they're being yelled at because of their actions. They're just feeling bad that you're yelling at them, which makes a lot of sense too. Which, because I'm like, okay, yeah, no wonder my dog keeps going to the garbage at certain times, like certain times, because she, like, even I don't know if she understands that it's wrong, or even though we say bad girl Ariel, hey, what are you doing, like get out of there. I think she just thinks, oh, I'm in trouble. She doesn't really understand why. She's just, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did. And so I think that's like interesting, but there's almost like no way. I don't know. How would you know, like, other than
You
a
can't. Like
human
our
looking at
reality is
just,
our
yeah,
experience, and to communicate your
yeah,
experience it's really tough. And that's why.
yeah.
Uh,
That's what I thought was really fascinating, like watching Breck's progression of how, where he starts versus where he ends up. I thought that was like really, you did it really well while you're watching him, the readers seeing him, his progression, and kind of at what level, it's like what milestones, and how can you
mhm.
identify those milestones, and then how do you like put that on paper through this character who's essentially, yeah, like a child learning in a lot in a very short amount of time.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that is where that Piaget framework came in very handy, because plotting this early on, I was a little lost in like how you exactly do that. And then I found that and I was like, great, this seems like a really cool science-based way to lay this out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I never heard about that either, and I thought it was so cool because then, and even then, when I'm like, I was like looking through the challenges that Breck and have to go through, and I was like, man, I don't think I would be able to figure this out. What does that mean about what developmental stage that I'm in? Bring me a challenge that like maybe I could think about because I don't know, maybe I was just getting too it. I was feeling too much for him instead of being like, oh wait, maybe I could solve this if I really tried. I don't know. So that's awesome. That's funny. Let's see here. All right. I'm gonna throw a couple of these at you.
Sure.
What were the most challenging parts to write? What were the most enjoyable parts to write?
Challenging parts. I think we covered one, which was the writing Breck and making sure that he was evolving at a fast enough pace that kept the story interesting and at a slow enough pace that it kept the story credible. So finding
Yeah.
that balance was a little bit tricky and took a few iterations to get right. And then, funny enough, Liv's mom was just a tough character for me to write because I didn't. She is. I don't know what the right word to describe her. I know for some people she's a polarizing figure, again, in being a domineering mom, but I wanted for somebody to be able to look at her from a somewhat sympathetic perspective and say, yeah, she's mom. She wants the best for her kid and this. But I had to write her through Liv's perspective. And through Liv's perspective, she's unreasonable. And that became a challenge to try to ride that line. That was almost harder than developing Brecht for me personally. I just found giving sympathy to a character as told through another character's voice that doesn't want it to be that way was tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I can yeah, because I'm thinking like you're writing from the point of view of a teenager, and yeah, you bring up a really good point of whether it's okay, you gotta yes, her mom is not being completely unreasonable, even though I would be like, no, just let her do it. Just let her
Right.
could finish her project. Just let her do it. But at the same time, yeah, you understand where she's coming from. But yeah, if you're writing from the point of view of a teenager, it's like, Mom, oh, my life is horrible. You're making like you don't understand. You don't get it. Like
Hmm.
it's like typical teenage brain of you don't understand me. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't get it. Why can't you just let me do this? And yeah, I can imagine. Do you have any kids? If you don't mind me
I
asking, like, how
do.
did you like?
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old
Yeah,
year old
I was gonna
daughter.
say, how did like you channel that? Yeah, there you go.
She wasn't that age when I started writing it, but yeah, look, I think the experience of having kids and looking at things from that parental perspective, and one day just finding yourself in the kitchen defending something that your mom or your dad told you at one point, and you're like, "This is ridiculous," and you're on the other
Yeah,
side of the equation, and you're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that."
yeah,
So it maybe that's why I was particularly sensitive to wanting to make sure that the mom could be seen, her perspective could be seen through a somewhat sympathetic lens. But yeah, that is definitely
I
having
know.
kids
I totally
colors
get it.
that.
Yeah, because I have two little boys, but the older one, he is like 7.5, and he's in second grade, and I'm like, he's already growing up so fast. I'm like, you better stop it. But no, there's been so many times where I'm like, I see myself like having kind of the same attitude or seeing it through that not the tunnel vision, but seeing through the eyes of a parent, like through my parents, who were like,
Hmm.
my parents were like, my parents were hands off, but like when they were hands on, it was like, I'm recognizing that now, or I'm recognizing things that like maybe I want to change, but it's still the sentiment's the same. No, you're there to guide them, to protect them, to help set them up for success and for self sufficient, things like that. And or he's getting into like his video games now, and then we're like, okay, no, time to put it down. But I also sympathize with the understanding, no, like you're in the zone and you just want to finish what you're doing
Hmm.
before you like shut it off. Or it's no, no, shut that down, put your shoes on, we're going, we gotta go. It's or time to eat dinner or whatever. But I totally get that from his point of view where he's just, no, like I'm almost done, just let me finish this game or whatever. I get it. I totally get it. But at the same time, I'm like, excuse me, absolutely not. Like I will take that away from you forever. Like
Yeah. Dang it. My mom said that.
exactly.
Yeah, it's
What are you
funny
doing?
balance. It's a funny way of coming full circle. Yeah, sometimes I will
Yeah.
tell stories to my mom that of things that are happening with the kids, and I'm like, you must just be chuckling inside because of the cosmic justice of all of this.
It's or even then, yeah, it's not only that like me becoming seeing through leveling with my parents' perspective for a bit, but also like I see him, my child throwing my phrases back at me like as the parent. I think I just remember one time we were like, getting ready for bed and he was like pushing back a little bit and I was just like trying we were like arguing, it was getting a little heated and he was like, "Mommy, I'm trying to talk to you, but you keep interrupting me." I was just like I was trying so hard to keep my face straight but without my jaw dropping to the floor. I was just like, "Okay, honey, you know what? Okay, so tell me what you want to say." I was like, "Okay, is this a learning opportunity? Is this a way to see?" Yeah,
It's
it's like
all a
things like
giant
that that I'm
learning
like, "Oh my
opportunity.
gosh." Yeah. It just never stops. You're always learning.
Yeah,
Always being humbled as well, for sure.
100%.
Oh, was there anything enjoyable that stood out to you about writing the book?
Oh, there was so much enjoyable that stood out to me for writing the book. If we're going with characters, Todd was so much fun to write. I am from Texas originally, and he is this amalgamation of a lot of sage yokels, I guess you could say. Just people that you would meet that they might open their mouth initially and you would go, not so sure. And then you hear what they're saying and you go, wow, you actually have a lot of wisdom in there. And defying what your initial assumptions are. So he was a lot of fun to write. Lana was a ton of fun to write also just because she's such an incredible smartass and I got to channel my inner smartass writing her. And so she was a lot of fun, counterbalance to Liv's, I guess, more wanting to maybe just control it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I like those. Yeah, that's funny that it does remind me of you people who are like, you're absolutely right. Who you're like, oh, I'm not sure. Like they may not have a lot to say, but then when they do say it, they're speaking little and saying a lot. People who like maybe say a lot, but speak a lot, but say very little.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's
Exactly.
like,
And they don't necessarily have the credentials either. They're like commonplace people. You don't look at them going, that's the professor that's up on the stage. That's the wise person in the room. It ends up being kind of your everyday person.
yeah, I know. It's funny because I come across sometimes people like that, but it's even like the allure is there. Like it's little more intriguing. You're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like you're just being very careful with your words and what you choose to share about yourself or share with other people.
Hmm.
So I think those characters like that can be super fun too. Let me see. All right, I'm gonna also throw this at
All
you.
right.
Yeah. What advice do you have for Liv? What advice do you have for Breck?
Wow. That is an interesting question. What advice do I have for Liv? I think if Liv were a real person, I think it would be just let go, relax, let some things happen. She just has such a high need to control and be so heady about everything. Allowing for a little bit of just, kind of serendipity and seeing where things go and letting go would probably be very good for her. For Breck, oof, gosh, I don't know. And I guess I don't want to allude to where the story goes, but for Breck, I guess it would just be about believing in himself and knowing that he just needs to, he gets a lot of lack of validation from everybody that he talks to. And believing in who he is and that providing his primary source of validation for what he experiences would certainly eliminate a lot of the turmoil that he experiences in the story.
Yeah, yeah. I know. If it was, I would give him a hug.
Yeah.
Be like, dude, trust your gut, man. It's okay. It's like you're right to question authority at this point. You're on the right track, buddy.
Yeah. What a great question. I never thought about that before. I love it.
Yeah, I like asking authors that because sometimes they like they're totally floored, but then they're like, they'll give solid advice. And I'm like, man, that's solid advice all around. You could use that for everybody.
Yeah, probably
It's so
true.
funny. Yeah. Okay, so what are you working on? You have any projects coming up? Are you working on anything that you're allowed to talk about that won't get you in trouble with yourself or whatever?
Get in trouble with myself. So
Yeah.
I do have. I will say that I'm noodling around with different ideas for what comes next. Part of it is whether I want to stay within YA and write another YA book. I will say I have a fun story that I wrote about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago that I think has some potential to go back and repolish and turn into something that would be a lot of fun. And it's about a guy who wins the lottery and then does some things that you might do if you held like that card. And then he learns that he didn't win. And he
Oh
has to
no.
deal with all of the consequences and he can't take it back. And that snowballs and takes his life in a very different direction.
Oh
So it's a
wow.
fun story.
Would you go like on a comedic route or like a darker route, or you're still trying to see
In
through?
stories, there's definitely more room for comedy and funnier moments in that, while still trying to, hold on to some few deeper themes within that, just based on the characters that are in there. So that's something that I'm
Yeah.
playing around with. And then I have a few different ideas for YA novels that I think would also be fun to write.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel like, yeah, if you have the ideas, it's just a matter of seeing where you want to go. But it's good that if you have an audience in mind, but then who knows, you might start developing your story and be like, you know what, I think I want to take this in a different direction. So you never know until like you get down and do the first draft, right?
No,
Just to
and
get it out of
honestly,
the
to
way.
me, that's the toughest thing about writing. It's not coming up with ideas, it's committing to that one idea. I've got a
Yeah.
file on my phone with no less than 100 ideas. Now, probably 95 of them are terrible, but I could massage them into something. But like really going, all right, this is the just knowing how much effort goes into writing one of these things, deciding that I'm going to commit to that is, I guess it's fear of commitment. I don't know. My wife could certainly attest to that existing
Mm.
in my life, but it probably just goes to fear of commitment. Yeah. Committing to that
Yeah,
one
yeah,
thing.
no, it's just having that like confidence to trust yourself and to be like, maybe there's going to be self-doubt and second guessing, but it's just a matter of, yeah, like you're absolutely right, committing to it. And I could see the fear where you're like, okay, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to stick with it. But then that can be a little scary. You're like, oh, what if I hate it? And then I'm like, no, I have to. And then it just starts a whole new process for you.
Yeah. And then I'm out a year and a half. I don't know, however long it takes you to get that first draft out. Yeah.
I know.
At some
Yeah.
point, you got to just do it. You got to take the plunge. You got to go, all right, I'm not totally certain about this, but I'm going to try to figure it out.
Yeah. And if anything, at least you got it out of your system. You hashed it
Yeah.
out and you gave it a shot. And like how what you're thinking about looking back on, maybe you put it's a desk drawer novel until you're ready to take it back out again.
Do believe that, look, even if you don't succeed with it, you learn from it. Those initial novels that I wrote, I don't look at them as failures. Like they were my training ground. And so I do think
Hmm.
I learned so much from each one of those. That's a helpful mentality going into it. Just that even if this doesn't work out, I will get something out of it. I might not get what I wanted to get, but I will get something out of it.
Sure. Yes, it's a great healthy outlook.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, you're still gonna get something out of it, and that's
Yeah.
perfect. I love it. Okay, Steve Schafer, where can we find you online and on social media?
Okay. So I have a website. It's steveschaferauthor.com. I will say I had Breck programmed, the AI programmed on that website. So you can go and chat with him there. And
Oh wow,
he's
be my new
set.
buddy.
Yeah, he's set about mid journey through the novel, so he is at least scratching the surface of sentience at that point, and he has just a ton of
Okay.
questions and perspective, and that's been fun. I enjoy going and just chatting with him just to see how that creation gets mirrored back at me. So that's fun. And then I'm on TikTok, Steve Schafer author. I think Instagram is the same handle, and I believe Facebook is that same handle as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to include all the links in the show notes and stuff so people can find you wherever they want to find you. Perfect. So yeah, Steve Schafer, eMortal, that book is available now. Steve, thank you so much for your time and for chatting and for just being honest and authentic in your answers. And whenever, if and when you're sharing more of your work with the world, feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat again.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. I really appreciate you having me. Love the conversation.
And there you go. That was Steve Schafer talking about his book, eMortal. That book is available now. Check out the show notes where you can find links to purchase the book and find Steve online and on social media. Please find Cantina Book Club online and on social media while you're at it. Check out the YouTube channel. And I'm whipping up some new things over at the Patreon if you want to check that out. If you're interested, you can support the Cantina Book Club for as little as $1 a month. Anything you guys want to do is totally appreciated and helpful. Any book recommendations you can find on cantinabookclub.com. And if you're finding books that you like, if you want to help out the authors for free, you could literally just go give them a rating and a review on Amazon or Goodreads, and it totally helps them out. Pre-orders help them out, but also reviews of their existing book helps them out. It encourages them if you want to check out more of their work. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening.